Hello and welcome to DNA. I am Chitresh. With me is Sridhavesh Singh Maini, a geopolitical analyst associated with the Jindal University. Today we will be talking about Trump and Trump 2.0's policy with regards to China. Trump 1, we saw policy where he was close to China, he was on amicable terms till COVID struck, and then the tariff wars also happened and it went downhill from there. With Biden, that policy sort of continued. But now with Trump coming in again, there's a slight surprise with him saying that he wants Xi, the president of China, to be there in the US for his oath-taking ceremony. China has also expressed interest in having a better relationship with the US. So what do you think? Is Trump point to going to be pro-China?
See, first of all, as I said, Trump always talks about America first. So as we've discussed, it's always about the convergences. Wherever there are convergences with any country, it's fine. But now, China is obviously a special case. It's a very important sort of priority for them. One is the economic issue. As you very rightly pointed out, during his previous tenure, the ties actually began to go down after the tariff wars, which began in 2018. Then COVID accentuated, the tensions. Sort of they got exacerbated after that. So now the issue is that, but interestingly, when he, during his Asia visit in 2017, his visit to China was, by all standards, it was very good. In fact, he even praised Xi Jinping. And now there is a bit of the issue is that while on the one hand, in his previous tenure, some very tough steps were taken against China, not only in the economic sphere, even if you look at the higher education, some of the toughest restrictions were imposed vis-a-vis Chinese students. So even in the people-to-people domain, there were changes. But then there is a contradiction because, as everyone very rightly points, many analysts and commentators, that Trump gets along with many of these leaders. At a bilateral level, the US may be having problems, the country may be having issues, but he gets along very well with these leaders.
The strongmen leaders.
Exactly, that's what. So that is so. But see, now the issue is now we are in a very different situation altogether. China is also facing an economic slowdown. They cannot also not afford tensions to a large degree. Trump, while on the one hand he has to play to a domestic gallery, and as you very rightly pointed out, that there was a continuation of the China policy when during Joe
Biden came out.
Yes, except the only difference being that the back channels, communication was always maintained. The importance of dialogue. That's something which Biden always highlighted. And one of the famous, the term which he always used, not only him, even many analysts use that competition should not turn into conflict. Now, the issue is that the question is that is Trump going to give more when he looks at the relationship with China? You cannot, of course, dehyphenate the two, but will the geopolitical tensions dictate the relationship, or will it be the economic strains between both countries, right? They do converge at certain points because they have whenever the US, as I said, during Trump won, a lot of issues which earlier were not linked to national security began to be linked with national security. So that is one part. The second is, you see, if you look at his choice of individuals, you have China hawks on the one hand, but the person who's been chosen as the US ambassador to China is a pragmatist. He has worked in Asia. He understands the world of business really well, and he will be transactional and pragmatic, while of course giving precedence to US interests. So, it's very tough to make predictions with any leader, as I've always, always. And on the other hand, if it's Trump, it's even. But he did allude to the fact that if he could come for my inauguration, it'd be really good. But obviously, that's unlikely. And yesterday, I think even the Chinese foreign minister has also spoken about the fact that that both countries need to have a good relationship. He did highlight the differences, and Taiwan was one of them, that the US should not interfere and so on and so forth. Now, the issue is that it's going to be circumstantial. How does the geopolitics pan out, the global economy and so on. The other is that Trump too also, is it going to be is it going to be absolute transactional? And will there be voices which, while having a tough stance vis-a-vis China, understand the importance of continuous engagement?
Yeah.
So right now, if you look at his team, the tilt is more towards China hawks, but there are some individuals who are pragmatic, and Trump himself also uh, would, cannot afford. The US also cannot afford a very strained
Yeah, Trump
relationship.
is himself a transactional person. He's a
Transactional.
businessman
So
at
if
heart.
the economic issues, if they find a middle path
Yeah.
for all that, they could have a working relationship. And the other issue is also about this. It also depends upon how far China and Russia go ahead with coming up with this an alternative economic architecture,
Definitely.
de-dollarization, and so on and so. How aggressive, how proactive are they on that? So if a middle path can be found, it's very tough to find a middle path, but if a middle path can be found, probably there will be tensions, but they'll be manageable.
Yeah.
But if the both sides take a very
Line, yeah.
hard line and hard stance, and they're sort of
Yeah.
intransigent, then finding a middle path is very tough, and there is going to be more and more global sort of uncertainty.
Yeah.
And then you also have countries which can be a sort of bridge between the US and China. They will also play an important role.
Yeah.
ASEAN countries, for instance, are immediately impacted because of geographical location.
Definitely.
So some of them which have good relations with both have the potential of playing a
Yeah.
bridge as well. So
Yeah,
let's see.
definitely. So I have two questions before we wrap it up. So one is, as we say, Trump may be a little more pro to China than what he was by the end of his last term, but there is this perceived skepticism and doubt in America's administration around China. So there are allegations around spying for China, and there is Chinese hackers who targeting. So there's a lot of allegations that float, and there is mistrust. So how do you think that will play out? And my second question is, do you think Trump will be using this stance against China to counter Russia? Because with Russia, it doesn't seem that there'll be any softening of ties with Russia already embroiled in this war with Ukraine and a conflict with Europe, a larger conflict. So do you think this China policy is influenced by that?
Yeah, so that is one part. But then, as as we have discussed earlier ourselves, you also have people like Elon Musk in the administration,
Yeah, definitely.
who would play
Who has
very
massive stakes in China also.
massive stakes in China. That's one part. Then the second part, the second question was.
Was around this Russia, and if
Yeah.
it is to offset the Russian.
Yeah. So basically, if you look at when this is also a very unpredictable sort of thing, because when when the Biden administration began in 2020,
Yeah.
when there was, one of the think tanks had brought out a document
Yeah.
about how the Biden administration should try and create a wedge between Russia and China, and how they need to have a manageable relationship with Russia, where obviously they will have tensions.
Yeah.
But the reverse happened actually. After the
Yeah,
Russia-Ukraine, during the Biden administration, we do talk about US-China ties, but the channels of communication began after December 2022,
Yeah.
November 2022,
Yeah.
after they met on the sidelines of the G20. Some sort of engagement was it continued all through.
Yeah.
Whereas on the other hand, because of Russia-Ukraine war, obviously where US-Russia. So this triangle also is very complex. At times, the US has been mostly interesting in the last 50 years. The US, because of the economic stakes, whatever the rhetoric aside, China also has some sort of stake in global economic stability. Xi Jinping has tried to disrupt that, but it cannot, given China's own stakes in global that there being a certain amount of global
Yeah.
economy, it cannot afford that.
Yeah.
So I think probably the slowdown in China also will have an impact about how China also approaches the US. So it works both ways. But the triangle, it will be interesting to watch, because while at an individual level, Trump certainly has good relations with Putin, but obviously the US-Russia relationship cannot be dictated by that. But at the level, obviously, if you look at the economic linkages and so on and so forth, the US-China relationship is.
Yeah. So it's an interesting composition wherein Trump's relationship with President Xi may not be great right now, but US and China have these relationships that cannot be strained more than an extent. And Trump has also shown this interest in having a better relationship with Xi, and which will probably be in line with what he has with Putin. So, will Trump 2.0 be pro-China? In the start, it might be, it might look like, but how will it pan out? We'll see as the time comes. I am Chitresh. I was with Tridivesh Singh Maini. We'll see you again on DL.